Okay, we're going to start the meeting consistent with the provisions of Assembly Bill 361. The East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors and Standing Committee meetings will be held via teleconference, video conference, only during the current state of emergency. Any interested member of the public can participate via Zoom by utilizing the link listed above or telephonically by utilizing the dial-in information listed on this agenda. Meetings are accessible to people with disabilities, individuals who need special assistance or disability-related modification or accommodation to participate in this meeting, or who have a disability and wish to request an alternative format for the meeting materials should contact the clerk of the board at least 2 working days before the meeting at 510-906-0491 or cob@ebce.org. If you have anything that you wish to be distributed to the board of directors, please email it to the clerk by 5 p.m. the day prior to the meeting. Okay, there we go.
Would you like me to take roll or make notes?
Let's take roll for now.
Okay, so member Trish Monroe.
I'm here.
Here. Chair Jaime Patino.
Here.
And note at this time, we do not have a quorum as all the remainder of the members have not joined us yet. I am not aware of any members being absent today, was not notified of anyone. So as we continue, I will let you know as people join.
Okay.
And quorum is met.
Okay, do we have public comment?
We don't have any written public comments received for the committee. Jennifer, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I think it's 3. Let me look at that. Sorry. Yep, it's a 3-minute. Jennifer has not raised her hand, so we have no public comments at this time, Chair.
Okay, so let's go. We'll skip over approval of the minutes. Let's do the regulatory update.
Okay, I think that's me. Do we have a slide deck we can pull up? Thank you. Let's skip to the
Oh, you want the first slide?
yeah. Right.
Here you go. Sorry, I was testing it. There you go.
Didn't want to do it in reverse order. Okay, and you're gonna drive, right?
Yes, sir. Just let me know and I'll push forward.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Todd Edmister, Director of Regulatory Affairs, Deputy General Counsel for the agency here. And so we're going to step through the highlights of the past month in the regulatory space. My colleague Alec Ward will handle the ledge piece next. We have separate decks for each. So on the regulatory front, big news here is we got a proposed decision in resource adequacy. We also have had a good deal of activity around the voluntary auction and market offer, or VAMO process. And I'll go into a little more detail on each of these as we get through. This is just the high level outline. There's been some activity in the net energy metering, or NEM 3.0 proceeding at the CPUC. And then earlier this week, we received the first insight into what we're going to see next year as far as the PCI and the ERRA and PCI forecast filings. So let's go ahead to the next slide. I'll start to step through each of these. First up is the RA, the resource adequacy PD. Just to quickly level set, and you can kind of give me a virtual kick in the shins if you know all this, and I should fast forward. Resource adequacy is a program established by the PUC that requires load serving entities such as ourselves to acquire capacity in addition to energy. So with electricity, you tend to think about the energy side, which is the actual sort of flow of the electrons over the wires. But the other less well-known piece of energy procurement is capacity, which is the ability to generate that flow as needed. And so the idea behind resource adequacy is that any load serving entity should always have not just access to the physical facilities needed to cover their load at any given time, but a little bit extra just in case some of those resources aren't available for some reason or another. So there isn't really a good analogy for anything else in the real world. I give it to you. It's a sort of unique thing for energy, but it's a payment that is in addition to the energy payments. It's an obligation that's in addition to the obligation to have the actual energy to serve your load. So research adequacy has been extremely controversial, and it's been a long-running fight at the PUC over what the rules will be for those of us who have to go out and get this stuff. And so the latest in that space was a proposed decision, or PD, that came out on May 20th. So the way things work at the PUC under the relevant sunshining laws is that the PUC has to put out a decision 30 days before it acts on the decision for public notice and comment. I mean, there's some additional gloss around that, but that's kind of the basic rule. So an administrative law judge generally will be the one to write a decision that will go out. It'll be aired out for 30 days, and then the commission will act on it. So this particular decision came out on May 20th. The PUC could act on it as soon as June 23rd. Because it's controversial, odds are that the PUC will end up kicking the can and it'll get voted on later, but we may see something as soon as later this month on it. So what does it do? Well, that's the bullets here under key issues. The first is it reduces kind of how much solar and wind count for capacity. So ELCC is estimated load carrying capacity. The idea is that any resource can cover a certain amount of load. And so historically you'd have gas-fired resources, right? So going back 15, 20 years before solar and wind really took off, every power plant would have a nameplate, and a power plant would be worth X megawatts. And that was the load that it could carry. With intermittent resources like solar and wind, it's more complicated than just looking at a nameplate to figure out how much load that resource can support, because it's going to depend on how much the wind is blowing or how much the sun is shining. And so it's been an ongoing effort to kind of figure out empirically how much load can a solar plant really support, how much load can a wind plant really support, and that's all kind of reduced to this number, the ELCC. And so this latest decision, based on the most recent information from the performance of plants over the past 2 years, gives the capacity values for wind and solar a haircut. So that's what this first bullet is about. The second bullet adopts 24-hour slice a day RA framework. So again, if we go back to first principles, RA is about having the resources to cover your load if you need it, right? So the idea is that you can go and there's some power plant somewhere that can turn on if needed to cover the load that you're supporting. Historically, that's been addressed monthly. So you would look at what is the absolute highest load that I have to cover in a given month, and then you would aggregate your resources, and you would say, look, over the course of the month, I have this slug of resources, and I can cover my peak load in the month. I'm all good. There's a real paradigm shift coming in this PD, and what the PD looks at is whether you can cover your load at any given hour. And that's a huge change, right? Because maybe some of those resources that you had were going to have a repower or an outage, so they might not be available all the months of the year, or they might not be available all 24 hours. And that was a nuance that was glossed over under the prior framework. Now you've got to look at each hour and the resources that are available in each hour to make sure that you have that capacity to cover your load in that hour. And that brings us to the third bullet point, which is it rejects hourly resource load trading within the 24-hour framework. So one of the ideas in play was, well, okay, if load serving entities have to cover every hour, maybe in a given hour, load serving entity A will have some excess capacity, maybe load serving entity B will need it, and they can trade and optimize that way. And so the PUC said, no, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to have that. And I think that's probably the major flashpoint for us looking at the PD. The 24-hour slice a day framework, on balance is actually quite sensible. And the ELCCs are empirically based, so probably not super controversial. But this last one is definitely an issue that we're going to be challenging, because having created this obligation, it deprives us of a potentially very useful tool to meet it. So we're working on that. And and we'll have to see where that shakes out. So on to next steps, we're going to be working through Cal CCA. They're taking the lead on responding to the proposed decision. And we're potentially going to do some work on this individually as well, given that it's important. As you see there, 24-hour slice a day, we really need the trading to go along with it. So those things should move hand in hand. So the written comments due June 9th, apply June 14th. So that's RAPD. So let me stop. I've been monologuing. If anybody has any questions, comments, happy to take them before we move on to the next slide.
Director Monroe, do you have any comments or questions?
My only comment is I thought that was an enormously clear explanation. I probably can't repeat it, but it was very, do it another few times and I probably will be able to. That was one of the best explanations I've heard of PD.
Okay,
So
well, thank you. We'll see where it goes. Notwithstanding he's out of the office, Nick is meeting with the CalISO CEO today to talk about this very issue. It's important to us, and we're going to keep fighting on it. But RA is a challenging topic for CCA at the commission for lots of reasons. So, while on balance there was much to like about this PD, this is a big issue for us. So we'll see.
Yeah, I share Director Monroe's comments. This is something that if you haven't been around EBCE, you wouldn't understand it. And then those of us that have, we barely understand it. But I mean, I was taking some notes, and you did approach this a bit. Doesn't it seem counterintuitive that they would adopt the 24-hour slice a day RA framework, but then at the same time reject the hourly resource load trading?
It does, and the best explanation I can give you for why they would do. I mean, there's a bunch of sort of in the weeds arguments, but I tend to view those as fig leaves. The best rationale that I can see for why they're doing this is because it will lead to a much larger amount of procurement of new resources, because now, since you can't do that optimization, you have to over procure to make sure you're covered in every hour. And that's not crazy. I mean, it's not good for load serving entities and by extension for customers because it's more expensive. But we are in a world of shrinking capacity margins, right? So that's a big concern for the CalISO and for the state, and they want to see a lot more new project development, and getting rid of that ability to optimize means you're just going to have to buy more. So that may be what's driving it.
Okay. You still have more slides, or is that it?
Sorry, nope. Still
Okay.
more. Not done yet.
Okay, go for it.
Try to go a little quicker. Next one, if we could. Thank you. Okay, VAMO, voluntary auction and market offers. So this is a PCIA joint here. If we go back in time, as the utilities have lost their load to largely CCAs, also direct access, they've been left with excess resources. And so the big question has been how to offload those resources to the entities that are still serving load, have taken over the load serving responsibility. And historically, the way PG&E has done that is they've had sales, right? They've sold RPS, the renewables. They've sold electricity. So the idea that has been in the works for several years now has been, instead of having them do these periodic sales, let's just allocate the resources. Where everybody's paying for them through PCIA, so why don't we just offer them up to the people who are paying PCIA, or the entities whose customers are paying PCIA? Voluntary auction, or excuse me, voluntary allocation. Some of the folks might turn those allocations down. That's the market offer piece, right? So the idea here is PG&E will offer every load serving entity a market share proportionate amount of their renewable resources. And then each entity can accept it, decline it, and then depending on where PG&E comes out of all of that, whether everybody accepts their allocation, then fine. But if some folks turn down their allocation, then they try and sell the rest. That's the market offer. So VAMO, voluntary allocation market offer. So there's a lot of in the weeds details around how that's going to work out. And so there have been some recent PUC actions to clarify some of the details. And so that's what the third bullet is there, right? So we got a proposed decision at the end of last month that clarified some of the accounting rules for the resources that are going to get allocated or sold through this process. We got a ruling from an administrative law judge that clarified some of the timing issues, principally around the mismatch between when the allocation would be finalized and when the plans have to be submitted for the 3-year renewable, the RPS compliance windows. So there was a bit of a mismatch there, so I had to clean that up. And then there's a bunch of other even deeper in the weeds issues around the exact timing of the acceptance of the amounts, the allocation amounts, and when the market offers will happen. So that hasn't quite hit the threshold yet of being filed at the PUC. It's subject to some ongoing negotiations between PG&E and CalCCA. So all of that is happening. Where things stand right now is that we expect that we're going to have to fish or cut bait on the allocation by July 25th. That's when we would have to have an executed contract assuming we accept whatever amount in whatever form we want to accept, submitted to PG&E. So keep your eye on that date. Let me pause there, see if there are any questions, comments on that slide.
Director Monroe? Okay, me neither. So
I'm
off
good.
to-
Right on.
Okay.
Okay.
To NEM 3.0.
NEM 3.0, everybody's favorite. So you'll see here kind of I think the bottom line is that this had been kind of in stasis for several months, right? So there was this proposed decision that came out and ignited a firestorm towards the end of last year. And then the PUC said, well, we're not going to vote on that, and basically took it into the shed for reworking. But at the start of May, we got an administrative law judge ruling that had a bunch of questions and clearly telegraphing an intent to modify, if not entirely go a different direction with the proposed decision. So these are kind of the big topic areas here. I'm going to focus more on the process, right? So we've got comments on this ruling, which answers these 14 questions, due on June 10th, with reply comments 2 weeks later. We expect the next step then would be oral arguments. There had been oral arguments scheduled for, I think it was February, and that got canceled when the PUC pulled the decision back. And then subsequently, we would expect to see either a revised PD, which the J would issue, or an alternate PD, which would come from the commissioner. There's no real clear timing on any of this. There's no deadline within which the commission has to act on any of it. This is all sort of self-inflicted, if you will. There's no legislative deadlines driving the PUC to act on any of this stuff. So we don't know when there will be action on this, but probably this year, best guess. We shall see. So that's the state of play there.
Okay, Director Monroe.
I'm still good. Just following along.
Yeah.
I mean, so far what I'm getting is just is good information, but nothing I feel I need to, nothing to contribute of value.
Yeah, I mean, our substantive positions have been ventilated at the full board level, and
Yes.
so I don't think there's really anything more to say about that. We know where we are.
Yeah. Just keep us posted.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any more of NEM 3.0?
Nothing on that. ERRA Forecast. Okay, so this is the biggest dollar item issue for the agency, actually. So just to level set here, the ERRA Forecast proceeding, we call it the ERRA proceeding, but it's actually the PCIA and the ERRA proceedings. So the PCIA, as you guys may recall, is the charge for the below market, the above market resources that PG&E has continued to own or contract with, despite them no longer serving as much load as they used to. This is how they recover, PCIA is how they recover for those above market cost resources. And then the ERRA proceeding is how they set their bundled customer rates. And so both of those things are filed simultaneously as part of this ERRA forecast filing. And so we see it now, and we have the next 6 months to fight about it with PG&E. At the end of that process, we will get a new PCIA, a new set of PCIA rates, and PG&E will get a new set of bundled customer rates. And insofar as our rates are pegged to PG&E's, we will have a new set of EBC rates flowing from that as well. The last time I presented on this, I noted that we were in a very favorable headroom situation, in large part because we had been taking it on the chin the prior year because the PG&E rates were too low. And so this year, the rates for PG&E have been quite high because PG&E's had to collect the amounts that it didn't collect but should have the prior year, right? So there was a big differential between the PG&E bundle rate this year and kind of just what they needed to collect for this year. And then when you factor in the PCIA rates, which had gone down, we had a lot of headroom this year. I think we'll probably have a fuller presentation on this. We've only had the numbers for a couple of days. So I don't want to pretend that we've gone into it in depth yet. I will say that for next year, we expect to have less headroom, in large part because that under collection effect will have worked itself out. And while there was some under collection forecast, or there is some under collection forecast for this year, it's much less than we saw in 2021. And so we're going to see that big slug of under collection going away with a commensurate reduction in rates for next year. So we do expect to see bundled rates actually drop. And so our rates would have to drop in concert. The good news is that in parallel, we are expecting to see the PCIA go down. And this is one of the paradoxical effects of high electricity prices. And electricity prices are quite high right now. It means that those assets that PG&E has hung on to are not as below market as they were. And so the PCIA goes down because it's essentially a mark-to-market methodology. So prices go up, PCIA goes down, prices go up, retail rates go up. We have more headroom, that's a good thing. But on the other hand, our procurement costs can be higher as well. It's that we're not fully hedged. So there's a lot of complexity there that we'll be digging into over the next few weeks. But I think the top line item is that while we don't expect to see much of an increase in PCIA, we do expect to see a drop in the PG&E retail rates based on the most recent filing. And we could see that as early as January 1st of next year. Questions? No? Okay, stunned into silence. Awesome.
Me either, no.
I think that's it for me. So let me hand it over to, I guess Alec is up next to go through the ledge piece of the agenda. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Todd.
you. That was really helpful.
Yes. Okay, Alec, you're next.
Sounds good. We've got a presentation. Yeah, thanks for throwing that up. Let me get set here. So I'm Alec Ward, Associate Policy Manager at EBC. Thanks for having me today. I was here in front of you all in early April discussing what recommendations on legislation we're going to make to the board. And now we've made two passages of those recommendations. And I'm also here to update you on bills we're watching and the status of all of these bills combined. So on this slide right here, this is just a reminder of the legislative timeline and process. As you can see, they've moved the bills out of the first house. They're now moving into the second house. And also upcoming is the budget has to be passed by June 15th. So that's a very upcoming item there. Next slide, please. So although we're pretty far into this legislative process this year, we still have a lot of bills that we're tracking. So I'll try to be pretty swift here. I've got 2 slides, one filled with the Assembly bills, one filled with the Senate bills. So I'll just dive in right with AB 1814. This is a Grayson bill, and it had board support. This would authorize CCAs like EBC to apply through the PUC for transportation electrification programs. Unfortunately, the bill was pulled by the author this year. It faced some pretty wide pushback. We hope to see it again later year, but it will not be moving forward. We have AB 1960. This is via Padua. This encourages the governor to support more regional diversity for PUC commissioners, and it could help better tune the PUC for the diversity of needs that we see across California. So this is a bill that the board supported. Right now, it's moved out of the Senate committee and is now onto the floor. So as you'll note, right now things are moving. So the status, this was written last week. I'll note whenever there's a change. This one has moved out of committee and onto the floor at this point, though. We have 2061. This is a Ting bill. This also had, oh, excuse me, this not had bill support. This requires data disclosure from EV charging stations, and it orders the CEC to assess reliability and equity issues for these chargers. And we had actually worked successfully with the author's office to make sure that this bill wouldn't have any unintended consequences, wouldn't be too burdensome to any EV customers. So we're happy to see that. And right now it is in the Senate awaiting a committee referral. We have AB 2667. This is Friedman. We do have EBC board support on this one. This creates a new CEC fund. This is for customers who want to adopt DERs, that's distributed energy resources. It's really a very broad range of DERs that we're excited about, including demand management, managed charging for EVs, really just a wide scope of DERs that generally reduce GHG emissions. So the EBCE will actually through this be able to apply for these funds for their customers. So this could also very much help us expand our load management programs like our resilient homes. So this has moved from the awaiting a committee into the Senate Energy and Utilities Commission, but no hearing date set yet. AB 2700, that's McCarty. This requires the PUC to work with utilities to ensure that their distribution systems are upgraded to support the state's anticipated level of EV charging. This requires CARB to also share fleet data to inform electrical grid planning, and it also requires the CEC to forecast distribution needs for DERs. It's still awaiting a committee referral in the Senate side. AB 2703, this is Maritsuchi. This establishes reliability standards for EV charging stations. You're not seeing double here. It is very similar to AB 2703. So we worked with the author's office on a kind of the same concerns there, making sure this wouldn't be too burdensome for EV customers, and this would be a productive bill. And lastly, on the assembly side, we have AB 2765. This is Santiago. We did have board support on this one. This is a new fund that would cover the cost of PUC's public purpose programs instead of continuing to rely on customer delivery rates, their electrical rates for funding these programs. So that would help with affordability. And it also would have helped lower the bills, especially for our lower and middle customers, income customers that we're mostly focused on. But unfortunately, it did not make it out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee, so it's done for this year. And the next slide, I can walk through the Senate bills. So we have SB 45, Portantino. This requires the Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery to analyze progress in achieving organic waste reduction goals and to assist local jurisdictions with funding to comply with these goals. And it is currently awaiting the Assembly of Natural Resources, and there'll be a hearing on the 6th. SB 833 is DOD. This is a revitalization of last year's SB 99. This is a grant program for local governments to develop and expedite community energy resilience plans. Unfortunately, it doesn't give CCAs a pathway to participate in this program, but it has been referred Oh, it's still, yeah, it has been referred to Energy and Utilities Committee, so it has moved from its waiting period on the Senate side. SB 881 is a min bill. This gives the PUC authority to monitor and penalize non-compliance with IRP GHG emission reduction standards. Cal CCA was working this bill. They were opposing unless amended, as they were trying to make sure that any compliance standards would be more feasible. But this did not make it out of Appropriations Committee, so it will not be moving on to the Assembly. Now we have a new bill that's been widely discussed and talked about, SB 1020. This is a layered bill. There's 3 parts to this bill. We're currently sitting at support if amends. So I'll go by part. The first one is setting interim targets for meeting California's renewable zero carbon goals. These new goals would be 90% by the end of 2035 and 95% by 2040. Given that we have 100% clean energy goal by 2030, we obviously expect to exceed these goals, but we very much applaud the raising of standards for others. So we're supportive of this section. Second section would be state agencies must be 100% clean energy by 2030. We also think that this is a good idea, but we have an amendment here that adds, we have an amendment to a part of the bill that adds a lot of unnecessary and expensive requirements. Specifically, we're asking that state agencies can satisfy their 100% clean energy by simply enrolling in EDCE's Renewable 100 products and those offered by other CCAs, so that we're able to serve these state agencies. Currently, we would not be able to do this due to the some stringent rules under this bill as it stands. And then thirdly, this would create a climate equity and trust fund, which would help with electric bill affordability. This fund would support, again, a wide breadth of costs, including transportation, building, electrification, clean energy, including DERs, equity initiatives, wildfire mitigation, a lot of things that are currently being funded through electrical rates. So it would move them out of these electrical rates. The PUC would approve the distribution of these funds for certain eligible costs, including disbursements to CCAs such as EDCE. Again, we think this is a good idea, but we have an amendment that we're recommending to ensure that there is no competitive disadvantages for CCAs, and that eligible and costs incurred by load serving entities like CCAs like ourselves might be reimbursed in full. So currently we're working with the author's office on these amendments, and this bill has been referred to Utilities and Energy Committee. Now we have SB 1112. This is a Becker bill. This does have board support. It's a technical bill increasing reporting to counties on decarb programs. This proposal would really help support tariff on bill financing proposals. And these are currently being put forth in front of the PUC in a proceeding. We do support these types of proposals as they help overcome some barriers to electrification, including access to capital and credit, as well as home ownership. So renters would be able to start engaging in these programs. This has been referred to Utilities and Energy Commission for a hearing on June 8th. SB 1158, this is another Becker bill. This changes the power source disclosure standards to be more granular. Right now, Cal CCA has been working with the office to make amendments, so there won't be any hang-ups with anyone trying to comply with this bill. It's currently referred to Utilities and Energy. And then SB 1393, this is the one bill that the board voted to oppose this year. This ordered local governments to obtain approval from the CEC for any local requirements that mandate the replacement of fossil fuel appliances with electric appliances in existing buildings. So this would permit the CEC to deny these projects for really, it had a long range of reasons. This did get amended to make cities follow the new reporting rules and new considerations from the CEC for these efforts, but we still see this bill as unnecessary and potentially burdensome to some of our cities that are working to adapt stronger electrification standards, which we applaud. And then last one here, SB 1482, this is Allen. This is mandatory standards for EV charging installations and multifamily units. and the author has been working with Cal CCA and has been receptive to some of their suggestions already so far. So that work will continue, and it is still currently awaiting committee referral. On to the next slide. Thank you. So for next steps, these are the same steps as presented in April. We're going to continue reviewing these bills for any amendments, continue to update the board, and recommend any positions to take formally. Once these positions are voted on, we usually send a letter to the bill and meet with some offices for some advocacy. We're going to keep monitoring the governor's budget request, especially the provision for $6.1 billion over 5 years for zero emission vehicles. And then we're going to continue to engage Cal CCA on all of these legislative efforts. I think that should be the end, so I can pause for any questions or comments now.
Okay, Director Monroe, do you have any questions?
Nothing. No, sorry. I am always impressed. It's a great update. And I know I'm just kind of like, keep on keeping on, but seriously.
Appreciate that.
It's very helpful. It's also it's just really interesting to see the way in which the attempt to do good needs to be kept in check, not kept in check, but monitored. I don't know. Thank you for being on it. I will stop being inarticulate.
Yeah, we're strongly focused on smart policy, so that's exactly what we're gunning for.
Hey, Sean, how you doing? Welcome aboard.
Yeah, sorry, I was running a little bit late, but I've been here for actually a little bit. I've been listening in. I wasn't just not. I was in the attendee room. So.
Oh, okay. Do you have any questions
Good
about
reports.
the last report?
Well, Alec, you had mentioned, I think it was on the Laird bill, that there was some language in there that would have not allowed CCAs to provide power to state agencies. What was that about? Were they introducing that, or is that existing rules?
It's in the current rules. It wouldn't specifically disallow CCAs from providing the energy. It would just make it harder for us to do it. I don't quote me on exactly what the provisions are, but I'm pretty sure it's having some sort of like separate reporting, making sure all procurement is brand new. It's things that wouldn't allow us to offer what we currently can, which is 100% renewables. And I think a lot of CCAs would struggle with being able to do this just for state agency load.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Director Kumagai? Okay. I just had one question, and it's kind of broad. So if you could email it later, if it's just if you don't have an answer now, any of the proposed bills, how much would they affect us very much with our proposed budget?
Yeah, if you give me a second to think about that. A lot of these bills would help expand our programs, and we could leverage some of those fundings. So I imagine that would have an impact.
Yeah, because we may have to, we're coming up on our budget season right now. We may need to, if something passes or doesn't pass, we may have to adjust accordingly later on. We're a pretty nimble group, so I mean, I'm not really too worried about it, but just to put that on our radar. Okay, is that it, Alec?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, since that was informational, that we are now done with that, and let's go back to approval.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
They are informational, and don't mean to be disrespectful, but we still should take public comment.
Oh, yes.
And so because we jumped straight from 4 to 5, because they are kind of blended together, it would be very respectful. We need to make sure that we're allowing public comment on both items. We could do that at one time right here, but I see we have Kate Caddy and Jennifer West to see if they have anything they want to speak on both items.
Okay, yes, let's do that.
Thank you, sir.
On items 4 or 5, do we have any public comment?
So if those who are in attendance, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. You can use the raise hand button at this time. and then you will be let into the meeting and your 3-minute timer will start. I do see that Jennifer West does not have any public comments and Kate did not raise her hand. So thank you
Okay.
for allowing that opportunity, Chair, but we have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, since we have Director Kumagai here now, we do have a quorum, so let's go ahead and take up the approval of the minutes. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Okay, Director
Second.
Okay, Director Kumagai makes the motion and Director Monroe makes the second. Can we do roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Director Kumagai,
Aye.
Director Monroe,
Aye.
Chair Patino.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously of those present.
Thank you, Director Kumagai. We actually got a vote done. Okay, so the next is committee member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board agendas. Do we have any? Okay, seeing none, then next is adjournment. So we'll see you all later.
Take care. Short,
Okay.
sweet, and very informative. Thank you
It was
all.
very informative. Lots of good info here. Okay, have a great
you,
weekend,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone.
Everyone have a good weekend.
Please note for the record that the meeting has adjourned at 12:45 p.m.
Okay.